It's good to be a sinner. You can rejoice that you are a sinner. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying you should do whatever your heart desires. I'm not saying you should only serve yourself and ignore your neighbor. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do all those good works that God has prepared for you to do. The scriptures are very, very clear. You have the duty and the privilege to show love to God and love to your neighbor in everything you think and say and do. The scriptures are very clear on that. But it's still good to be a sinner. You can rejoice that you are a sinner for this one reason and this one reason only. As the Pharisees and Pharisees and experts in the law so beautifully proclaimed, this man, Jesus, he welcomes sinners and he eats with them. Now, the Pharisees and experts in the law didn't originally say that in order to bring comfort to people. They didn't say those words, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them, in order to praise and thank God for his grace and mercy. Instead, they originally said those words to bash Jesus and put him down. You see, the Pharisees were egotistical and self-righteous. They thought very highly of themselves. They were not humble people at all. They thought they were the best people of the day. And outwardly, that might have been true. Outwardly, they did a lot of good things. They loved to show off to the people how good they were. And because they did all these good things outwardly, and because they thought so highly of themselves, the Pharisees and experts of the law thought that they had earned the right to be with Jesus and eat with Jesus. But Jesus had no time for them. Jesus never has time for those who are egotistical or self-righteous or think so highly of themselves that they think they've done enough to earn their way into his presence. And while that sounds terrible to say Jesus has no time for those people, let's think about why that's the case, why Jesus doesn't have time for those who are egotistical, self-righteous, and think highly of themselves. It's because those who have those thoughts, they're only focusing on what they can do for God. They're only focusing on themselves and think that by all the good things they have done, after all, they're better than most people in this world, we have somehow, some way earned favor with God. Oh, to be sure, those who think that way still will talk about the love of God. They know that they're not absolutely perfect, and so they need God to show at least some love. But just like at your work, you have to prove yourself to your boss in the hopes that one day your boss might be motivated in order to give you a raise or a promotion. So also people like the Pharisees and experts in the law think that they have to prove themselves to God in the hopes that God might be motivated to show them a little bit of love. But those are the people that Jesus rejects because they are rejecting his free grace. Those are the people that Jesus condemns because they're condemning the truth. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. For any teaching that is Jesus plus, right? Jesus plus something or someone else. Any teaching that is Jesus plus is complete and utter heresy. It's why Jesus so often condemned these Pharisees and experts in the law, and it's why we have every right to condemn those who are spewing such satanic lies today. And so when the Pharisees and experts in the law say, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them, while they're trying to bash Jesus and put him down because of the company he's hanging out with, when we hear those words, we're actually full of comfort and joy. Because if Jesus welcomes sinners, and eats with sinners? That means Jesus welcomes you and me. And he eats with us. For make no mistake about it, we are sinners. And let's talk about what that means. Let's talk about what it means that we are sinners, because I think a lot of people misunderstand that statement. When people hear the statement, we are sinners, oftentimes they think of this way. They think of the bad things they did, the bad words that they said, the bad thoughts that they've had. And they think, because I've made these bad choices and did all these sinful things, that's what then makes me a sinner. They think the sin happened first, and because the sin happened, that is what defines me as sinful, as a sinner. It's the way many people think about sin. But if that were the case, if the sin came first, and that is what then defines me as a sinner, then the solution is not necessarily Jesus has to come down and welcome me and eat with me to change who I am. Instead, if the sin came first, if that's what makes me a sinner, then the solution is that I need to be better taught, or I need to be better motivated so that I have better knowledge to make better choices in my life. For if I can stop myself from doing these bad things, or at least minimize that, then I can stop myself from being defined as a sinner. That's what happens when we think the sin comes first, and the sin is what defines me as a sinner. But if you search the scriptures, they never talk that way. They don't talk about the sinful actions happening first, and that's what defines me as a sinner. Instead, the scriptures say, I am a sinner first. You sang it in the psalm, did you not notice it? Surely I was sinful from birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Before we did one thing, before we had one thought, before we said one word, we were sinners, receiving that horrible curse from our parents. And because we are sinners, what are we going to do? We're going to do those bad things and say those bad words and think those bad thoughts, because that's who we are. We are sinners, and sinners can't help but sin. And if that's the case, if we are sinners first, receiving that terrible curse from our parents from the moment that we were conceived, if that is true of you, and it's true of me, and it's true of everyone else in this world, then the solution is not to teach us better or to motivate us more, because no matter how hard we try, we can't change who we are. We're sinners who are going to sin. Instead, if we are sinners first, and that's what leads us to do all these sinful things, then the solution is exactly what the Pharisees and experts in the law said in our text. The only thing that can change us, that can change our identity from being a sinner into being a saint, the only way that can happen is if Jesus welcomes us and he eats with us. And isn't it amazing that Jesus would be willing to do that? For Jesus would have every right to not welcome you, a sinner. He would have every right to not eat with you, a sinner. He would have every right to demand that you should do something, anything, in order to prove your worth to him. After all, that's the way it works in every part of society, right? As a student, you have to prove yourself to the teacher in order to move to the next grade. As a worker, you have to prove yourself to the boss in order to get a raise or a promotion. You have to be able to prove yourself to be able to retire early enough, whatever that means for you. Yes, in our society, we always have to earn the right by doing something to prove ourselves. But that's not the way it works with God. He knew that we could not do one thing to prove ourselves because we are sinners who are constantly going to sin. And so solely out of his grace and mercy, based not on one single thing that you have done, solely out of his grace and mercy, Jesus welcomes sinners. And he eats with sinners. And when that happens, Jesus does something amazing. He saves sinners by changing who they really are. After all, isn't that what's happening right here, right now? Look around you. Look into this room. What do you see? You see a bunch of sinners, right? You know me. It's not hard to point out my sins. It doesn't take a special measure of wisdom to say, that guy standing up there, he's not perfect. I'm a sinner. I make it clear every day. And I could do the same for you, right? We could do the same with each and every person in this room. It doesn't take any special measure of wisdom to say, we're all sinners who regularly sin. We all prove that every day of our lives. But when you look around this room right now, what also is happening? Jesus is coming down to us sinners. Jesus is welcoming us sinners. Jesus is eating with us sinners. This is what is happening right now as we sinners who sin every single day because of who we have been from the moment we came into this world. As we sinners gather here, Jesus comes down and eats with us and welcomes us. Jesus is coming down to you through these words right now. He's came to you in the waters of baptism. He will come to you when he gives you his very body and blood to eat, where he's not only eating with you, but he actually is the very meal himself. And when Jesus comes down to welcome you sinners, what happens? You're changed. You're washed in his blood and changed. You're changed from being that sinner who can only sin into being a saint who is worthy enough to dwell in the realms of heaven forever. For if the Son of God, Jesus himself, was willing to bleed for you, if the Son of God, Jesus himself, was willing to be pierced and nailed and slowly suffocate as he gave up his life on the cross, if Jesus, the Son of God, was willing to use his power to take back his life and to rise from the dead and to stand outside of his very own tomb alive, if Jesus, the Son of God, was willing to do all of that for us sinners, then is not Jesus, the Son of God, willing to come down to us sinners through word and sacrament? Is he not willing to associate with us sinners, to welcome us sinners, to eat with us sinners, to give us the free and full forgiveness that he won by his death and resurrection? Of course he is. That's the entire reason why all of us sinners gather here week after week. It's so that Jesus can come to us and welcome us and eat with us and change who we are. And that's why, my dear Christian friends, I say it is good to be a sinner. No matter what you have done, it is good to be a sinner because Jesus did not die and rise for perfect people. He does not come down through word and sacrament only to those who have proved their worth to God. Jesus died for sinners. He rose for sinners. He comes down through word and sacrament for sinners like me, for sinners like you. Jesus comes down to forgive sinners so that he can turn sinners into saints who are worthy enough to live with him forever. It happens every single week we gather here. And so it is good to be a sinner in that way. In fact, it is good to invite other sinners to come to this place, including that teenager that the world is giving up on and saying he's never going to amount to anything, including that adult who did something in his past and seemingly can never run away from that, including that person who wronged you and harmed you and maybe made your life difficult. It is good to invite that sinner to meet God here. Jesus died and rose for sinners. He comes through word and sacrament to forgive sinners. The whole work of the Son of God is to change sinners into saints. For as the Pharisees and experts in the law so beautifully put it, this man, Jesus, he welcomes sinners and he eats with them. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please rise as we confess all that our triune God has done for us sinners by using the words of the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only